Before I fired a kiln for the first time, I was terrified. What if I broke someone's masterpiece? Or worse, what if I broke the kiln? Hopefully this short movie will help allay some of those fears if you're a first-time kiln operator. I started by learning some of the basics about kilns. Pyrometric cones are essential to firing a kiln properly. They measure the amount of heat being absorbed in a kiln. Some cones are not the shape of cones at all, but are bars that sit in a bar sitter like this. A bar sitter is designed to automatically turn the kiln off when the cone bends to a certain degree. To open the bar sitter, press down on this piece of metal and slide the bar into the bar sitter. While your finger is still pressing down, take your other hand and pull up the latch so the white on button is lined up with the hole on the latch. When you let go, the piece of metal should catch the latch, keeping it upright. Next, make sure the timer knob is set all the way to its maximum time. There are temperature control knobs on all kilns. On this kiln, they were located on the side of the electrical box. These knobs set the temperature at different heights in the kiln. The time at which you change the knobs corresponds to the type of clay and the type of kiln you're using. Plugs like these are put into the vent holes when the kiln has a red glow inside. The plugs help keep the heat on the inside of the kiln to better fire the clay. The best advice I can give you about your particular kiln is to read your kiln manual. When I peered into the kiln for the first time, I wondered how on earth would my arms reach all the way down there. Under the guidance of my professor, everything went smoothly though. I learned that in a bisque firing, you can put the pieces as close together as possible as long as they aren't touching. Another scary part was trying to balance the heavy kiln shelves on top of the skinny kiln posts stacked on top of one another. I quickly learned to err on the side of caution and not take my hands off the shelf until I was sure it was secure. The first time I loaded the kiln by myself, many mistakes were made. For starters, I broke multiple pieces of hair off of a bust. Secondly, I couldn't solve the puzzle of putting everything in the kiln that needed to go in. The next day, my professor rearranged the second shelf for me, so we were able to fit everything in. But then, I forgot to turn on the kiln. I put the cone in the bar sitter, I flipped up the metal latch, but I did not press the button. We were 4 hours into quote-unquote firing before we realized what had happened. I was mortified. My professor was monitoring the kiln until 9:30 that night. Fortunately, everything made it through except for a shoulder on a bust. My next task was to put the kiln through a glaze firing. Glaze contains tiny pieces of glass that, when heated, melt and coat the piece of artwork. The biggest concern when loading glazed works into the kiln is that the glaze might stick to the kiln shelves. To prevent this, I used ceramic stilts like these to raise the pieces off of the shelves. Even pieces like these needed stilts to prop them up because the glaze on the sides of the pieces may run down if it's put on too thickly. When I was unloading the glazeware, one of the kiln posts fell and I thought I had broken a student's frog. The kiln wash on the shelves had stuck to the frog's leg and the glaze had stuck to the shelf. I looked at the frog's body more closely and realized the body was only scored in one direction. With a sigh of relief, I knew the frog broke during the firing process. Fortunately, the rest of the glazeware came out unscathed. Loading a kiln isn't as difficult as I thought. Nobody got mad at me for breaking their pieces, and the kiln is still intact. If you're about to load a kiln for the first time, read your manual, take a deep breath, and remember to always turn on the kiln. But if you don't, it's not the end of the world.